my name is Muriel Hagenaars. I'm a sustainability analyst at ADM. And this year I will also be chairing the GFLI Technical Management Committee. And yeah, after Nick's great introduction to the GFLI, I will deep dive a bit more into the technical aspects of the database. And I hope it will be useful for you. And please feel free to ask any questions related to the technical terms or the data sets themselves. So I will start talking a bit about the database download today. Then I'll talk about the use of the database. So the key points I want to raise are the allocation methods, the metadata, the data quality rating, which is all together in the database. We'll go through a results example on climate change. And market mixes is also a new feature since the update, so I'll talk a bit about that. And then, after the conclusion, hopefully enough time for the Q&A. So for those of you who haven't downloaded the database yet, there's two different options that you have. As Nick mentioned, there is a version of the database that you can use in LCA software. So if you have any advanced LCA software programs, you can download this version of the database and plug it into that. So this version doesn't contain yet the calculated results. It calculates, the LCA software calculates that for you. So it only includes the inventory data in an aggregated format. You would have to do the work then after that yourselves. And one thing to note is that the files are not updated yet since October, so this is still the previous version of the GFLI database. So what you can download in Excel format is the life cycle impact assessment version. So this shows the different data sets, including their results. So you have the climate change, all the other impact indicators that you can look at all together in one Excel file. And we have two different downloads on the website. One is the general database using the GFLI baseline methodology. And then we have another version, which are six different data sets, namely of Brazilian crops. And these are, this is coming from a new data in project with Embrapa. And they use, let's say, a more country-specific methodology that is not the same as the methodology of the rest of the GFLI database. So that's why, to make sure no one unknowingly directly compares these values, we put them as a separate download. But they are more accurate for that region, so it is interesting to look at that as well. Then looking at the impact assessment methods that are available. So as I explained, you have the environmental impacts already calculated, and there's two ways in which this can be done. The first one is the environmental footprint method. This is the one that was developed under the PEF framework and adopted during the pilot phase. And you have the recipe, which has slightly different indicators, but also a lot of overlap. So it also includes things like climate change, etc. And this is also a globally acceptable or accepted method. So when you have this database in Excel format, you see different tabs. I'm not sure if you can read it from the back, but you will see that you have to choose between different tabs, different allocation methods, and also different impact assessment methods. So you now know the two impact assessment methods, and then I will speak a bit about allocation. So allocation is basically when you have, for example, a system, a product you're assessing, and then at some point you get two output products, and you need to divide the impact until that point between two output products. So we take here the example of rapeseed processing. It goes into the crush, and then you have rapeseed meal and rapeseed oil as outputs. And how do you allocate the impact after that? So you could do that on a mass try matter basis. So you allocate the impact based on the weight of the output products. You could do it on an energy basis, then you look at the crude energy content, and on an economic basis, which means you look at the average prices of the different output products. And here it's key because prices can fluctuate. You usually take the price of a 3-year average. And this is also, these allocation factors are already provided in the GFLI database, so it's already a given number. One other thing to raise is that there are different methodologies that are applicable to different products and markets. So in the feed industry, it's clear we have the, as Nick mentioned, the PFCR for feed ingredients. And here it's recommended to use economic allocation. But we also have other industries prescribing other allocation methods. So this is just something to be aware of that, for example, the vegetable oil industry uses energy allocation, or at least recommends that. And the starch industry uses mass allocation. But yeah, it's of course important to be consistent within your calculations because you don't want to choose economic once and then another time mass allocation, mix things up, and then you might under or over-report your emissions. Just to show the effect on results depending on your choice of allocation method. So here we have an example of the rapeseed meal again, where on the left side you see the results of rapeseed meal crushed in France using economic allocation, which is the orange bit. It's around 600 kilograms CO2 equivalent per metric ton. The energy allocation has a much higher allocation factor on the meal side. So it's 35% instead of 24%. And then it increases the impact on the meal level by 50%. And the mass allocation factor is 56% for meal. And for oil, it's 44%. And you can see what this does to the final result on the rapeseed meal level. So yeah, this is something you will also see once you go through the database, that there's big differences, and it's just something to be aware of. Okay, moving on now to the metadata. So the metadata are the so-called additional data that are used to describe the data sets. I know it's maybe a bit small for people in the back, but in the end, once you see the table, you've chosen the economic allocation method and the impact assessment method, you will see all the data sets which you can filter. So here we have the example of wheat grain, a global average production mix, and you will see the year in which the data was published, the dry matter content and energy content, if available, as this is also the basis for the other allocation methods. And we are still working on including different other metrics such as the nitrogen and phosphorus content, which are also required to do more detailed environmental impact modeling on the heavy metals side. And then it describes if there's a market mix applied or not, and that I will speak about later. So another thing to be aware of is the DQR, the data quality rating. So in the same tab, you will see that there's an overall DQR for every data set, which consists of 4 different parameters. So the overall DQR is basically the calculated data quality based on 4 aspects, namely precision, that's what the P stands for, TIR, it's time representativeness, technological representativeness, this is TER, and GR is geological representativeness or geographical. So in the end, there's a matrix that's also available in the GFLI methodology, where you can see, okay, which rating would you give to certain input data. 1 would be the highest value. So for example, if you have very precise results. It's measured, it's verified, the reference year is correct. You have data of the region that is actually in your scope. Then you would give it a rating of 1, and 5 would be the lowest. So in the end, the DQR just gives you a quick overview, or at a quick glance, what the quality is of the data, with high being a 1, that would be the highest rating possible, and 5 would be the lowest. So you can also have a closer look at the matrix in the annex of the methodology, if you're interested. Okay, moving on to an example of climate change. So I'll again use the wheat grain example. So you have a long list of impact indicators. Climate change is one of them. These are the greenhouse gas emissions in CO2 equivalents, or typically the global warming potential over a time frame of 100 years. And it consists of 4 subcategories. So you have fossil, biogenic emissions, and then land and land use change are separate, as well as peat oxidation. So peat oxidation is a new category that was added since the latest update. And in the end, it shows the emissions coming from drained peat soils. So previously, this was not included for every crop, but under the PEF methodology, it's recommended to include in the carbon footprint. So what was done for the last update is we decided to include it for every crop, but since it has quite a high impact on the results, and also the methodology is quite new, so there might be some uncertainty to the values. We decided to report it separately. So it's again a separate category from the land use as well, just like the land use. So the land use change shows the emissions coming from, for example, land conversion. So this is emissions from carbon stock changes that occur when you, for example, convert grassland to cropland, or when you convert perennial cropland to annual cropland, etc. So every time when there's a release of carbon stock. And the fossil and biogenic emissions are, well, in case you burn natural gas, that would be fossil emissions. If you landfill above ground biomass, then that would be biogenic emissions. So a few more words about the land use and land use change, since this is quite a debated topic, I think, and it's important to be aware of how it's calculated. So we have the GFLI baseline method, which follows the PEF recommendations to apply the PAS 2050 methodology. Now, what this methodology prescribes or shows are different ways to calculate the land use change emissions, depending on the level of information that you have. So in the case of the GFLI baseline methodology, we assume that we know the current land use, which is, for example, the use for an annual crop, but we don't know the previous land use. So you have to make a high-level estimation of what would likely have been the previous land use that then results in a carbon stock change. So there's a way to calculate this with national statistics coming from FAO. So you look at the past 20 years, what has been the forest change, the change in forest area in the country. You look at what has been the change in grassland area, cropland area, etc. And then you allocate a certain amount of these changed areas to the crop that you're looking at. So this is the underlying methodology for the land use change emissions in the GFLI. So in the end, it's a bit too simple to say, okay, high land use change emissions means we have deforestation. It doesn't have to be like that. So it's just something to be aware of, that it's based on this methodology. And if you see high land use change emissions for a certain crop, then it would certainly be a reason to look closer into that. Okay, then a bit about market mixes. So a market mix is applicable to every processed crop. So for example, here I have the maize flour processed in Germany. And in this case, so previously, before the update, you wouldn't know where the maize comes from that is processed in Germany. I mean, one could assume it's mainly German maize, or maybe not. You'd have to look at trade statistics to make an estimation, as this is also what the market mix was actually based on FAO trade data. So what is now new after the update is there's a separate tab where you can look up all the market mixes. So you can see for every crop, every processed product, what the origin composition is. So here, for maize, so maize in Germany, you filter out the country and the crop. And then you see here a list, the third tab, you see a list of 9 countries that are included in this market mix. And on the right, you will see that Germany is contributing to 60% of the mix. So the main share of maize is actually indeed coming from Germany. And then it goes down all the way to Romania, which represents 0.5% of the market mix. So in this way, it's more transparent where the values are coming from, what is behind it. And you can also see if that would be representative for what you are trying to assess or not. And you can also see if how much of the market mix is covered. So in this case, the coverage is 100%. All of the countries that, according to the trade data, are the most important, they are all in there. But sometimes it can be that the coverage is less than 100% because you have maybe 1 or 2 origins that for which the GFLI doesn't have a data set, so that has to be left out. And then, of course, the percentage, the contribution is rescaled to 100. So 3 things to, on a more higher level for you to take away. So for users, it's important to have the appropriate interpretation of the metrics. Only then can you really unlock the value of GFLI. And the GFLI database provides a harmonized methodology to use in environmental footprinting. So it is key that we leverage this. So it makes sure that the things we calculate are comparable and consistent. And also, finally, a high adoption of the database. It will increase alignment in the calculation and also provide a common baseline for the future. So, that's it from my side. Do you have any questions?